Congressman Paul, you've questioned the fiscal conservative credentials of all these gentlemen, but particularly this week, Senator Santorum. You have a new television ad that labels him a fake. Why?
Because he's a fake.
So you are overly sensitive.
But now he voted for it, but now he's running on the effort to get rid of it. So.
And Congressman Paul, who is one of the most prolific earmarkers in the Congress today, would tell you, and I'm not criticizing. I'm just saying that that's a fact. Right. That he.
I think you got to let him have a chance to say a word.
Mr. Speaker, you were referenced by the governor.
I'm the most conservative member here. I have voted, against more spending and wasting government than anybody else.
You take money from poor people in this country and you end up giving it to rich people in poor countries. We should export maybe some principles about free markets and sound money, and maybe they could produce some of their own wealth. But this whole idea of talking about the endless wars and the endless foreign aid, it seems like nobody cares about the budget. I mean, we're in big trouble, and nobody wants to cut anything. So if you're going to keep sending foreign aid overseas and these endless wars that you don't have to declare and go into Libya without even consulting with the Congress, the biggest threat to our national security is our financial condition. And this is just aggravating it.
Governor Romney.
Congressman Paul, what they're doing is cutting $1 trillion out of the defense budget. They're cutting $1 trillion out of the defense budget, which just happens to equal the $1 trillion they're putting into Obamacare. And so what you have is a president that has a priority of spending us into bankruptcy, but he's not just spending us into bankruptcy, he's spending the money foolishly. We need to protect America and protect our troops and our military and stop the idea of Obamacare. That's the best way to save money, not the military.
Right. But hold on one second, because Ron Paul wants to respond to that point.
Well, they're not cutting anything out of anything. All this talk is just talk. Believe me. They're nibbling away at baseline budgeting. It's automatic increases. There's nothing cut against the military, and the people on the Hill are nearly hysterical because the budget isn't going up as rapidly as they wanted to. It's a road to disaster. We better wake up.
CIA has explained it to us. It said they come here and they want to do us harm because we're bombing them. What is the whole world about the drone being in Iran? And we're begging and pleading, and how are we going to start a war to get this drone back? Why were we flying the drone over Iran? Why do we have to bomb so many countries?
And why should we not be talking about foreign policy that used to be the part of the Republican Party? Mr. Republican Robert Taft didn't even want us to be in NATO. And you're saying now that we have to continue to borrow money from China to finance this empire that we can't afford? Let me see if I get this right. We need to borrow $10 billion from China, and then we give it to Musharraf, who's a military dictator who overthrew an elected government, and then we go to war, we lose all these lives promoting democracy in Iraq. I mean, what's going on here?
Why are we have 900 bases, 130 countries, and we're totally bankrupt? How are you going to rebuild the military when we have no money? How are we going to take care of the people? Only when we declare the war, go in and win them and get them over with, instead of this endless fighting and this endless attitude that we have enemy all around the world. You cannot solve these problems with war.
30 seconds.
You've heard the war propaganda that is liable to lead us into the sixth war, and I worry about that position. Iran is a threat because they have some militants there. But believe me, they're all around the world, and they're all around the world, and they're not a whole lot different than others. Iran does not have an air force that can come here. They can't even make enough gasoline for themselves. And here we are, building this case up, please. They're building up this case just like we did in Iraq. Build up the war propaganda. There was no Al-Qaeda in Iraq, and they had nuclear weapons, and we had to go in. I'm sure you supported that war as well.
Okay.
It's time we quit this. It's time. It's trillions of dollars we're spending on these wars.
And of course, Congressman Paul always has a lot of folks in the crowd, and they're very vocal.
If you look at a map of Iran, we have 45 bases around the country, plus our submarines. The Iranians can't possibly attack anybody. And we need to only go to war with a declaration of war and just carelessly flouting it and starting these wars so often. Going to war rapidly like this is risky and it's reckless. Now, if you're so determined to go to war, the only thing I plead with you for, if this is the case, is do it properly. Ask the people and ask the Congress for a declaration of war. This is war. People are going to die, and you got to get a declaration of war.
We have the message America needs at this particular time.
Much as I used to, even more broke than before we made music, but maybe one day we'll get through it. Now my wounded eyes seen through the lies, many soon to die. Who am I? A student. I study to survive. Wounded eyes seen through the lies, many soon to die. Who am I? A student.